everybody, and welcome to the Commander Pod, your Magic the Gathering podcast for all things Commander. I'm Kelson Howell.
And I'm Spencer Simpson. We just had our The Commander Pod in-person event at our local game store, and it was so much fun. We're so stoked with how many people came. We had no idea that we had so many people that were local in our area that listened to our podcast. We had 5 people, which doesn't sound like a lot of people, but
more than we
expected. We
Yeah.
invited like our regular play group, and then thought, well, hopefully, if one person shows up, this will be sick. And we had 5, and I think we had another person who wanted to make it but wasn't able to.
I think we had a couple of people who were local but unable to come this week. So it was so much fun. Thank you to everyone who did come. And if you are local, we would love to see you at the next one whenever that happens. And if you're not local, we'd love for you to jump in the Discord so that we can hang out with you there. Hopefully we can do either some virtual play events or I don't know, maybe travel. We haven't talked about like MagicCon Las Vegas if we want to like try and get out there, but I know that's coming up here in a couple months, so could be fun.
Yeah, we'll have to see if that fits in our schedule, both
And
time wise and financially. Yeah, exactly. We're not rolling in the dough over here at the Commander Pod.
Yeah.
But I think that could be really fun. Can I talk about the game that I played? I was only able to get one game in because we ended up having 9 people. We kind of shot off games as people showed up. So you started a game and I started a game right after. And then we had more people show up, so I just sat out for the second game that people played. It was really fun. I don't want to share people's names on the channel, and I don't know what their Discord handles are. But we had some really fun games. I played with someone from our playgroup, our regular playgroup, and then 2 people who are listeners and enjoyers of the channel. Enjoyers is maybe editorializing. They clearly listen. But
I'm sure they enjoyed it.
Yeah. And they played Tawnos the Toymaker and Omnath Locus of Creation, which is the 4-color Omnath, right?
Yep,
Let me
pretty
double
sure
check
that's
that one. Yeah, Omnath Locus of Creation. And then our friend from our playgroup played his Myco Tyrant deck that he calls the Michael Tyrant, which I
still think we
hilarious.
need to get him an altar of that card that has Michael Scott on it.
Yes, oh, that'd be so good, like Prison Mike.
Prison Mike.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then I played Garth, and it was really, really fun. Garth did not do very much at all, and Omnath
Until the end of the game?
Until the end of the game, and then Omnath and Tawnos went nuts. It was crazy.
That's
I've never played against Tawnos or Omnath actually, and it was cool to see Omnath like abusing landfall triggers and like the powerful stuff he was able to do, and then also to see Tawnos. I had never seen Tawnos, and actually when I read Tawnos, I was like, that seems like okay. And then there was like 3 Elder Gargaroths floating around, and he was like mutating multiple times on the top of the same creature. It was insane. I didn't realize it was an on-cast trigger too, which he got like a twinning stat. Anyways, it was very, very fun, and everyone did awesome. And I got incredibly lucky that 2 people ended up knocking each other out. And
Nice.
I was the next in turn order, and
You just cleaned up the board.
and yeah, Garth had survived the turn cycle, and I had Nyx Bloom Ancient in hand, so I was able to just make a lot of mana and then untap a bunch of stuff and regrowth Doppelgang. And
That's awesome.
yeah, so things got a little crazy, but it was really, really fun. I haven't played Commander in a long time, and so it was really fun to play and to play with. To play in general, but then to play with those 2 was really fun as well. And then just meeting everyone else was a fun time as well.
Yeah, I got to play 2 games. And my first pod was just, both pods that I played in was just me and then 3 people from our Discord or our channel. And it was just, honestly, just some of the most fun that I've had playing Magic in a while. It was just the coolest. So absolutely loved it. I'm so impressed with like the deck building skill and creativity of this community. It's so amazing and really fun. Made for really, really fun play experiences.
Yeah, that's what I noticed as well. Like, not that I thought our listeners were full of scrubs that didn't know how to build decks or anything like that. But I was
yeah,
also
if you're here, it's because you're passionate about deck building.
yeah,
and we love
100%.
that.
I was like, yeah, baby, represent. That's so sick.
That's awesome. Well, and so one of the things that we went into this event wondering was how well the new bracket systems were going to work with matchmaking. And I will say we were at an advantage here. And I didn't know how much of an advantage we were going to be at because most everyone who came was familiar with our power level system that we use on the channel, that we've talked about on the channel. And that honestly did better than the bracket system.
Sure.
I think like that helped us a lot more than the bracket system. But we really did try and take and talk in terms of brackets as well, because we wanted to try them out and see how they did.
Yeah, well, we don't often get to. We mostly play with a regular play group, and we have developed the vernacular in our play group, which happens to be the power level system that we talk about on the channel. And we don't get opportunities to use the bracket beta, and this was our first opportunity to really try to utilize that system. And so we did try to, and you did a better job of that than I did. You talked about the brackets, I think, more than I did. And I think partially that's because you've been thinking about it a lot, because you put together a graphic to kind of help people visualize maybe what bracket their deck might be in conjunction with our power levels, right?
I did. I'm a planner, so when I knew that we were going to be doing this event, I knew that I wanted to do something to help facilitate these conversations, because I didn't know like how familiar the people coming were going to be with our power level system, with the bracket system. Like I didn't know, so I wanted to have something there that would help with those conversations. So I hadn't really loved any of the graphics or guides that had been put out so far for the bracket system, because a lot of them were like very summary, and I wanted something that was like comparative. Like I wanted like a table that said like, okay, like here is like line for line how each of the brackets compares to one another.
Sure.
And so I dove into anything that I could find on brackets, like gathering it mostly from the Wizards website, but also looking at Rachel Weeks put out an awesome graphic. That one was super, super helpful, and I used that to help inform this as well. But we'll show it on the screen. I made my own brackets reference sheet that did just that it compared each of them. So it had each of the 5 brackets, their name. It had how our power levels kind of mapped to those brackets to help our listeners. It had the game length, the description, the number of game changers, and then tutors, combos, mass land denial, and extra turns. So all the like card inclusions by bracket as well. And honestly, this helped me, like going through this exercise helped me so much for my own understanding of the bracket system. And I think I had a few epiphanies, which were then confirmed by the play experience that we're going to talk about today. But it helped me understand the brackets a whole lot better. And I hope it helped the people at our meetup too.
Yeah, well, even before we sat down to play, it prompted discussion between you and me about how the brackets actually worked. And you raised some really good points that we're going to talk about today. And I think the first one is how impressed we were with game changers. And this is maybe not something we were talking about prior to playing, but after sitting down, you had built this beautiful graphic, and we tried to use it, and it was really helpful in terms of comparing. And ultimately, one of the biggest signals for what bracket a deck was game changers, and I think we were both pretty impressed with how well those did.
Yeah, I think so. And when we talked about brackets on the channel a while ago when they were first announced, they also haven't been out that long. Can you believe that? Like, it feels like brackets have like been in the conversation for so long. It's only been like a few months, right?
Yeah. When did they? February 11th. So it's been a month since they released it.
It's only been 1 month.
Yeah, right.
Oh
I guess
my gosh,
they announced
that's wild.
Now
in October,
or
or September or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyways, I remember when we saw this the first time, we really liked the concept of game changers, because most of like card inclusions for our power levels is like pretty vibes based, because it's so difficult to make a concrete list of cards. But we feel like they did a pretty good job. However, one of our comments was it seems small. It seems potentially too small. But like for the most part, in practice, it does help, because that is one of the first things people say about their decks is, oh, well, my deck has 3 game changers, or my deck has more than 3 game changers, or my deck doesn't have any game changers. And like automatically that tells you which of the 3 brackets that it's potentially falling into.
Yeah, I mean, we've always kind of had signpost cards. Like, people would throw around, like, hey, do you play Cycrift? Hey, do you play, like, Tutors or whatever? And we've kind of always had that a little bit. And we carried that over a little bit into our power level system, where it was more vibes-based, but we said, hey, we're not playing stuff like best-in-class stuff, like Aristic Study or Fierce Guardianship or whatever.
We gave examples.
We gave examples, but we didn't, like, actually list them out. And I think having that definitive list is very smart, because it lets you say, hey, I am playing this deck and it does this, but because I'm playing 3 game changers, my deck is a 3. Like it is a bracket 3 deck. And that may not always be the case in terms of like performance of your deck. And that's like an entirely different problem because on paper it is a 3. So when you sit down to matchmake, like your excuse is like, I'm playing these 3 game changers. It doesn't perform that way. I better take them out because I don't want it to perform that way. Or beef your deck up to perform at like what a 3 is.
Yeah, and that is a different problem. I don't know that we need to dive too deep
absolutely.
on that. But the other thing the other thing I really like about Game Changers is that it gives a place for the ban list cards to go.
Yes.
Besides the ban list.
Absolutely. I'm
very excited for the unbanning that is coming up. I think next month. I think April is when they were planning on announcing it. So
yeah, and they I don't know that they guaranteed there would be unbans. They said there was be no bans though, right? And they said potentially unbans. I don't know.
I thought it was very high
likely it was unbans.
Yeah, I thought so.
Oh yeah, free Dockside, baby. No, I don't know that the world's ready for freeing Dockside again.
Funny.
In any case, I think our take on Game Changers is kind of in the same place that it was when we first were giving critiques of the bracket system. However, I think one of our biggest takeaways from this meetup, aside from the fact that we need to do it again because it was so fun, is that we were wrong in some of our thoughts about the bracket system. And the biggest point in which we were wrong is that we thought bracket 3 was too broad. We were wrong about that. And that's mostly because we actually think bracket 2 is the problem.
We were just like off center of the target, just like a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. We were like right in line, just a little bit to the left. A bracket 2 really, I think, is the big problem here. And that really comes down to 2 factors. The first one being is that there are cards that aren't on the Game Changers list that can seriously impact the power level of your deck that you can still play in a 2 because they're not Game Changers. So things like Deadly Rollick and Deflecting Swat and Mana Drain are acceptable in a bracket 2 deck because they are not Game Changers. And I think this kind of ties into like our original interpretation of the Game Changers list, which you mentioned a little bit earlier, which is we need to expand that list a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Because if you really look at what makes up a bracket 2, it kind of gives you an idea for like what the spirit of bracket 2 is. So let's actually read the definition.
Okay.
What Wizard said is, while bracket 2 decks may not have every perfect card, they have the potential for big splashy turns, strong engines, and are built in a way that works towards winning the game. While the game is unlikely to end out of nowhere and generally goes 9 or more turns, you can expect big swings. The deck usually has some cards that aren't perfect from a gameplay perspective, but are there for flavor reasons or just because they bring a smile to your face. And in addition to that, you can play those really strong cards that aren't on the Game Changers list and tutors.
And tutors.
And
three-card
combos. Yeah, so that's actually like a lot that goes into bracket 2. And so when I think of like the mid-power decks that you and I have been building for the past year, I think it actually fits exactly this definition of like strong engines, splashy turns, built with a game plan, some suboptimal cards, and we actually even shy away from tutors and combos.
Yeah.
So it's really, there's actually a lot of space inside of bracket 2 to build very powerful decks, I think.
Yeah, I think my inclination originally was I took all these decks and I tried to fit them in the bracket system that we had been building that have this definition, and had thought, well, they're probably not quite bracket. Like bracket 2 is kind of the lowest possible bracket that's not quote unquote jank. So they're probably in bracket 3, though they're not playing any Game Changers. But they feel like they perform higher than that. But even then, they're probably like not at the top end of bracket 2 in terms of like the quality of cards you could be playing, right?
Totally.
And so I think having those cards not be Game Changers and technically be available at bracket 2 is part of the problem. And does running those cards in bracket 2 make you a bad actor? I don't think so, because you're not like necessarily trying to combo off. And in fact, comboing off is fine as long as it's 3 or more cards. You're just playing good cards, right?
Because like talking about our power levels, like we would never run Mana Drain in a mid-power deck.
No.
I don't think we would. I just don't think it's like the type of play pattern or experience that for us constitutes what we define as mid-power.
Right.
It's not on the Game Changer list though. So like why wouldn't you put Mana Drain into a bracket 2? Because like the vibes of bracket 2 are strong engines, splashy turns, like big swings,
Right.
comboing off, using tutors. Like those are like the vibes that would hallmark a pretty powerful deck. So I do think that like the game changer list is one of the things that could really help bracket 2 by expanding the game changer list by like even like the next like 10 most powerful cards.
Yes.
Like it doesn't mean we need 100 cards on the game changer list, but I do think it probably needs to be more than 40 because like the drop off I don't think in power level happens. I don't think it happens at 40. I think it happens closer to like 50 or 60 that cards like get quite a bit less powerful.
Yeah, on the margin, like that's where I studied economics, and that's where like your slope, right, is like you're
Yes.
maximizing your value there
Yes,
by
exactly.
yeah, exactly, 100%. Yeah, and I think so. The other thing that I think will help bracket 2, you might have noticed, is we missed part of the definition. If you've been paying attention to the bracket system, we read fully their definition, except for part of the summary definition of bracket 2 is that they say that the average modern precon is bracket 2, which a little bit primes the pump in terms of your definite, like your understanding, right? Of it seeds your understanding of the definition of bracket 2, which is why I think we were inclined to say, well, our decks are probably bracket 3 then, because they're not precons.
They're not precons. And in our power levels, the bottom power level is just like precon.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like pretty much strictly reserved for precons. Because
yeah, outside
you
of
don't-
maybe like the most powerful ones, right? Like that we have kind of
Yeah.
said maybe bump into the next one up. But yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but I feel like it poisoned the well a little bit for me
Yes.
to read this definition that had precon in it, and then to think, like, would I feel comfortable playing one of these homebrew decks that if you ignore precon, if you ignore that language in the description, if the deck fits the description,
Right.
would I feel comfortable playing it against a precon?
I don't
No,
think so.
I don't think so.
If I'm
Yeah.
playing a red deck and I'm playing against a precon and Deflecting Swat is in my deck, I understand. Like, I understand that Deflecting Swat was printed in a precon, right?
Yeah.
I understand that. It has been printed in a single... It's not printed in every precon.
No, no.
Only those precons got free spells, right? And then
Yeah,
it's
and
never
they
been printed-
immediately realized that those were super overpowered.
they were super busted.
Yeah,
And so I think, it's just so much lower than what I imagine reading that definition bracket to be, right? And I think it's partially probably a byproduct of Wizards being pretty generous to their pre-constructed product and being like, hey, these are pretty good, right? But like, they could not hang. If you played a Grixis deck that played just those 3 cards that we were talking about, Deflecting Swat, Deadly Rollick, Mana Drain, like, and obviously like
that
a
would
functioning
feel
deck.
so bad against a
100%.
precon.
100%, right? Someone
Yeah,
like,
with like a 3-card combo and a bunch of tutors in it.
yeah.
Like,
No,
that doesn't feel good. So what this really means is that precons pull the bottom end of 2 very low, and the powerful cards that aren't on the game changers list pull the ceiling to be very, very high, which makes 2 very broad. And that's initially what we were thinking about 3, because we wrote off 2 as the precon bracket.
Yes.
And so we thought that the problem was that 3 was too broad, but after looking at it, I actually think that like the difference between 2 and 3 is really not that big, just because like the only real difference is game changers and late game 2-card combos.
Yeah.
But 2 is really, I think, where the problem is. There's just way too much breadth in 2. So how do we fix that?
Yeah, that is the question. And I think the big obvious answer is pull precons out, right? Because right now we have 5 brackets, but we really, in terms of like casual commander that you're mostly going to play, have 3 brackets, because 1 is jank, right? Which
Yep.
is kind of can be its own category.
Exhibition.
Yep, exhibition. 5 is CEDH, which can
is not
kind of
casual
also
commander.
be which is not casual commander. It is commander. Like, don't
Yeah.
come at me. It's totally commander. It belongs
We
to
play
be
CEDH.
It belongs to be in this definition, but it is not. It doesn't belong on the casual scale, right? And now we have 3 brackets that we can potentially
Yep.
be in, which I think is too few. And so, I mean, is obviously too few, or at least we need to change where the lines are. But I think it's
Yeah.
probably just easier to say, okay, now precons are bracket 1, right? We've moved these
Sure.
categories out of here. Precons are their own bracket, and now bracket 2 can fit.
You're
this
saying if
definition
we
pretty-
remove exhibition and CEDH, if we
Right,
just remove
exactly.
those,
Sure,
then we
right.
could have precons are 1, bracket 1, and then we have like a newly defined bracket 2 that just doesn't have precons in it, and then 3 and 4 are still exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not trying to like make it match exactly our system. I know it maybe sounds like that by being like, oh, our one was precons, maybe their one should be precons.
But that's worked really well, to be honest, because
But
like
it has, yeah.
nobody in our play group has ever tried to build a 1.
Right.
Right, because it's like, well, why would you? It's a precon, just play a precon, right? And it's so hard to build a deck to feel like it plays well with precons.
Yeah, it is.
So
It's really tough.
I played against a deck at our get together that the person had built to play against precons, and it was very fun. It was a group hug deck,
Oh, awesome.
which works great with precons.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think like honestly, just that one change too. I mean, would help us have 4 categories, which I think was part of like Gavin Verhey's original vision, right? Was like,
Yeah.
we don't want a middle point, so people can't just say, "Oh, mine's a 3."
Didn't he originally want 4? Wasn't that
I
the
think he
number that
originally
he was
wanted
going
4,
for?
and then he moved
Yeah.
up to 5. But I think the justification was, "Oh, 5 is CDH." But like,
Yeah.
but what like, but really, it's 3 categories, right?
Yeah.
And so
we just think that like bracket 2 really needs to just be split to precons and then exactly bracket 2 as it is, but without precons.
yeah. Yep. And then the other thing is that we probably think, because we're expanding the game changers list, it's probably okay to expand bracket 3 to include more game changers, right? Not, not exorbitantly more, but like 1 or 2 more game changers, especially because you're now taking cards that wouldn't have been game changers otherwise and shoveling them into the game changers list, right?
I still haven't thought about this enough yet. Like I'm 100% on board that we need to expand the game changers list. I'm like 80% on board that we need to, if that were to happen, if let's say there's 60 cards on the game changers list now, I'm like 80% sure that we should probably increase the number of game changers allowed in bracket 3 because it creates more of a separation between 2 and 3.
Right.
Because like if there's only 3, then it's not that big of a difference between 2 and 3. But if there were 5, then there is a much bigger difference between 2 and 3. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Is like we were talking about your Brago deck, for example, that plays like Grim Monolith, Chrome Mox, and Trouble in Pairs, right?
Yeah. Basalt. Yep.
Yeah, and so I feel like without those, it would probably fit solidly in 2, right? And
Probably.
and
Yeah.
those are like very quality game changers. Like, don't get me wrong, but I think like in my imagination, for there to be a significant jump from 2 to 3, you'd also want to be playing like Fierce Guardianship, Rhystic Study, or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, and honestly, like those are the 3 game changers in the deck because those were the 3 game changers in the deck before there were game changers. Like those were just cards that I felt like fit the strategy really well. And I understood that they were powerful cards, but they were like at the top end of the power level of my deck, right? And but I don't feel like the rest of my deck necessarily fits into like the 3 category all the time. So.
No. Yeah, and I think there's got to be some sort of other there's other levels that levers that we can pull too, right? Like I think that's the difficulty with this is we could say, "Oh, just add more game changers to bracket 3." But the problem is adding those 2 cards to your bracket 3 deck like may not like make it distinct enough. I don't know. What I'm thinking of right now is that I wonder if the jump from 3 to 4 is pretty big too, right? Because like at least in my interpretation of the vibes is like 4 is like go ham, highest power possible, right?
Yeah.
And so there has to be room for me to play like I'm gonna play Smothering Tithe and Rhystic Study, but also play like Mana Vault or whatever, and play like a certain number of like pretty powerful cards without being like fully optimized,
Without
and, like,
being
trying
like
to combo off
all tutors, all combos,
100%
fast
right.
as possible.
Doing fringe CDH stuff with a non-meta, like a very off-meta strategy or commander or whatever, right?
I think that so we were talking with the group that we met up with at our LGS the other night, and we were kind of giving the history of our channel's power levels that we talk about: low, mid, high, mid, and high. and we were talking about how like we'd been working on them for a really long time, and then Wizards announced the bracket system, and we were like, oh crap.
Yeah.
Like we were trying to solve the same problem. And I think like for a minute it felt like the bracket system would just like be replacing that, right? It's like, okay, like yeah, whatever they come up with, we'll just adopt that. The bracket system doesn't solve the problem that you just stated, and I don't know that it can. Like, but a discussion about power levels can solve that problem, because you could say, hey, like technically I'm a bracket 3, but I'm really looking for like a mid power game, or like, hey, I'm a bracket 3, but I'm looking for like a higher power game. And there is actually like I understand like the brackets aren't technically power levels, but they're very much being treated as power levels in a lot of cases, and to some degree like 2, 3, 4 kind of do act like power levels for casual play. So I'm actually like even more sold on the fact that having like a good understanding of the power level of your deck outside of brackets and the intention for like what the power level that your deck is trying to perform at is actually like more important than ever, because like otherwise you're going to have decks that on paper look matched up, but like you're not going to have a good play experience.
Yeah, and by on paper matched up, you mean literally bracket number and like numbers of types of cards and
game
whatever.
Changers, yeah,
yeah, game changers and extra turns and whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think I agree, and I think it's very important to have that understanding. I think it's something we've pushed for a lot, right?
Yeah.
I also think that ideally brackets would solve that as well, right? Like ideally we wouldn't be just using brackets as like an end of funnel tool for matchmaking, right? Because that's kind of what's happening right now is everyone is just taking their existing decks, and we've talked about this, taking their existing decks and saying, where does it fit? And we did that. Right, we did that, and now we're trying to, and we're not trying to dive.
And it's
too
like,
far
ooh,
into,
mine has 1 game changer, I can throw in 2 more, or oh, mine has 4 game changers, I'll just remove one of them. And game changers does make it very easy to just want to like shoehorn your deck into a bracket.
Yeah, 100%. Where like maybe you're like actually playing like a super combo heavy deck, and you just happen to not be playing any game changers, right? That doesn't make your deck a 2. And of course, like that could fall into the bad actors category, right? Like there's got to be some sort of like
I have a really hard time with that, because like I think like the vibe, I get that vibe. Like I feel that way. I feel like I worry that I'm being a bad actor by putting good cards in my deck for the brackets, but also like what am I acting bad against? Like there is no expectation to the brackets beyond like what they've written, and what they've written for bracket 2 is strong engines, splashy turns, big swings, tutors, 3-card combos. Like there's actually like, based on their description, very little room for bad acting.
Yeah.
So like I feel that same pressure though, and it's really frustrating to be like, I don't want to put Mana Drain in my bracket 2 deck, because it doesn't feel like a bracket 2 card in my opinion, like based on my understanding of power levels. But like there's nothing to tell me that that's a bad thing to do. It's hard.
And maybe I think we're also probably particularly sensitive to this because we found ourselves pretty deep in the Commander Arms race of like playing more and more powerful decks, and we're like constantly trying to fight against that inclination. Yeah, exactly. To like, while also wanting to build functional decks that do cool things at the right power level.
And I do think like the thing that we unlocked for our play group and for us that has worked just incredibly well is to push power level considerations to the deck building process, and like the very beginning, and deck building intentionally, and having a goal for where you're building your deck to, instead of just like building the deck, evaluating it based on the brackets, and then fudging it until it fits cleanly into a bracket. Just like have a really good understanding of the power level of your deck from the beginning, and what you want out of the deck, and the type of play experience that you want out of the deck. And that will answer a lot of questions for you. A lot of your deck building questions, when they come up, you've already made the decision that you're building for a certain vibe or power level of deck, and that's going to make those decisions a lot easier.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like that still leaves room, fortunately for us and the time we spent doing it, for our power level system, the deck building power levels that we've worked on to fit in a world where there's also matchmaking brackets. And ideally there's like perfect overlap with that, right? And there's not currently, and there probably won't be.
No. But they're both, I think they're both valuable tools. And I think you probably need both.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'll at least help educate like kind of what bracket you might fit. Like because you've been intentional about it, you're not going to sit down and be one of those people that says, oh, I'm playing 0 game changers, whatever, it's fine. Like this is a 2 when you've actually built like a no holds barred.
Yeah.
Like like the vibe of your deck is not a 2, which I think is like, again, just the hardest part, that it's like
you can't put that into a category.
You can't
can't put it on paper. Yeah.
No. And I think like ultimately I've been as we just read the bracket 2 definition and as we've been talking about it, I've been so incredibly pleased with our efforts to build mid-power decks on our scale and what our interpretation of mid-power has been, because it is like very aligned with that. Like it fits that definition so perfect. Like I'm thinking of all of my mid-power decks that I've intended to be that, and it fits that definition so well. And in fact is like slightly conservative as well, right? Like it's opened us up
because we don't play tutors and combos.
Right,
and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Or even the most powerful game changers, or most powerful
non-game changers.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's awesome. Well, we are very stoked about the bracket system.
Yeah.
Our proposal is split bracket 2 into precons and then whatever's left of bracket 2, and and I think that would help a lot. And then expanding the game changers list. Like overall, that's our major feedback after experiencing it.
Yep. So Gavin Verhey, expect this in your email.
Know.
We're gonna spam you. We're gonna spam you. Everyone send this to Gavin Verhey if you know him. Yeah. That is our takeaway. We don't claim to be experts at this, but I think, but we've thought a lot about it, and we want that to be worth something. So we're talking about it here.
We love it. Thank you everybody for listening. Come join us in the Discord. Make sure you don't miss out on the next time that we get together and play with everyone. So remember to like and subscribe. And until next time, remember to always pay the one.